Hello, everyone. This is Tracy Jones at Tremendous Leadership, and I am here with one of our newest authors, Peter Darcy, discussing an incredible book that we just had the honor to publish with him. And it is called Mr. Buddy's Guide to Nonprofit Leadership, Principles for Success in a Charitable World. And on our call today is the author, Peter Darcy. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Tracy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So, Peter, could you tell me about who Mr. Buddy is? I see Buddy Johnson has a PhD.
Which means phenomenal dog. Yes. Well, I'm inspired by your several books which feature dogs as narrators or the subject of the way in which you communicate your message. So that was what inspired me to take this book, which had been sitting on my computer for a number of years, and decide to pull it together and let Mr. Buddy be the narrator. The book is about a nonprofit leadership, but Mr. Buddy, who passed away last March,
Yes.
God bless him, but he was the greatest little companion of ours. But he injects a lot of humor into a serious subject, and that's the lightheartedness is what I tried to get from having him as the narrator of the book. But Mr. Buddy gave me the possibility and the motivation to get this all together and to get it published. And I thank you for, helping me in that effort.
Well, it was a joy to work with you. And for our listeners, you guys know how we feel about leadership. And we are a for-profit business, but everything that we do and have continued to do, and what drove my father founding the business, is what we can do with the for-profits to support the nonprofits. And for any of you that are on any nonprofit boards, this is especially going to really touch you because leadership is critical in nonprofits. And Peter, before we start, can you talk for our listeners out there? And before I was on nonprofits, I didn't really understand the difference between a for-profit and a nonprofit. I mean, I know the word profit, but explain to us how that drives the differences in context and approach.
Yes, the great management guru Peter Drucker once wrote a book about nonprofit management after he had spent his whole career analyzing management in for-profit businesses. But he understood the principles were basically the same, but the motivation was fundamentally different. In nonprofit world and work, you are motivated by a sense of altruism, a sense of humanity, a transcendent vision towards something. You want to change the world, and for the better, of course. So you look at some need in the world and some problem in the world, and you say, I want to either fix that or make a contribution to transform it into something better. It always has some kind of human focus and dimension, trying to better your fellow man and the world itself just through your efforts in the nonprofit. Everybody can't do everything, but some people are called to do individual particular things, and it's through that sense of altruism that they offer their efforts and their energy and their vitality to making the world a better place.
I love that. And tell me about how your experiences in your life, how that makes you really uniquely gifted and coded to speak into this topic.
Well, you're very kind to say that. I don't know how gifted I am. I think I'm kind of like a regular guy, like everybody else. But I would say that, I've been called to serve people all my life, and I consider that a great privilege. And so I've been in the nonprofit world for my whole career of 30 plus years. And I think my motivation for writing this book was when I took over a nonprofit in the early 2000s that was struggling. It had some problems in the previous leadership, and they had financial problems, they had divisions, they had mission problems and all that. And, I was given the possibility of taking over the organization and trying to bring it back to its core mission. And I did that over the space of 10 years, and it was a great mission, international mission, serving families and life. I felt that the experience that I gained in that organization was valuable for a lot of people. So what I did is I basically, after I left, I wrote down my thoughts and reflections on what it was like to be a leader in a nonprofit mission, how that was different from for-profit, and what were the particulars. Just for the sake of your your audience, the book is structured basically around 5 categories of things: leadership, promotion, organization, mission, and performance. Those are the 5 categories. And in each of these categories, we have 8 short points. And I want to emphasize these are short, readable points. You could basically take this book to your bedtime reading and read one little point every night. And in a little over a month, you can have the whole book read. You know, it's very readable. I think I tried to use a lot of images and stories to get the points across. But hopefully the book gives a lot of just fundamental best practices for people in the nonprofit world. And I hope it's of value to people.
Well, you do. You really hit a lot. And one of the ones is right when we start where you talk about leadership. And I can't emphasize enough. I mean, I think a lot of times we have the nonprofits and we're so missional and we're so servant driven. But nonprofits need leadership. I mean, strong, task driven, no nonsense leadership. And you open up the book, I think there's a line in there that says, nowhere is leadership more noticed than when it's missing. And I think a lot of profits, we think, well, the leadership, that's the tough stuff. That's for the for-profits. And it's like, no, folks, you know, that is even more for the mission oriented. But tell us a little bit about, you open up with the Titanic, which everybody knows about. And you really drill down into some really what goes on, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And tell the readers a little bit about that, because that was a fascinating hook about, you know, when it's on the line for life and death, that's when your true missional side, your nonprofit comes out.
That's right. Yeah, you find out who's got a heart for other people at points like that. You know, we think of the Titanic as a complete disaster, which it was, but it wasn't a complete disaster because there are many inspiring stories of leadership in those final moments of certain people that went above and beyond the call of duty and gave the ultimate sacrifice. So my point, I use that to set up the book by saying we all appreciate leadership mostly when it's absent. Okay, right. So the absence of the leaders who let the Titanic disaster happen, that absence of leadership was catastrophic. But when you look a little bit more closely at the disaster, you see a lot of great examples of leadership in and among those who went through it in their final moments, like, you know, the Scottish pastor who was on his way over to a Moody Bible Institute conference, and he had his 9-year-old daughter with him. He was a widower, and he left his daughter in the lifeboat, kissed her goodbye, knowing in his mind that he would never see her again, because he was going to go off and preach the gospel to the souls who were in desperate need at that moment of salvation. And it's such an inspiring thing to know that this man would give everything at that moment, including letting go of his own daughter, you know, when he would rightfully have had a place in one of those lifeboats. So he's one of numerous stories that I recount at the beginning of the book, just to set up the idea that, you know, leadership, when it's good, it brings everything together. And sometimes you don't even notice it because it's the way things should go. But when it's bad and it's gone, you know, things fall apart.
I love that. And share with the readers, you really go into the performance cultures of nonprofit. And having worked in a ton of for-profits throughout my life, it is all really driven by the bottom line. So if you have non-performers, it's really, you got shareholders, you got stock prices, you just can't afford to carry a lot of non-performers. But sometimes in nonprofits, because we don't have that same metric to measure against, we measure against mission and something greater than themselves. How do we still enforce, or can you break down the book how you really unpack the need to still really enhance a performance culture, and that everything we have to do, whether money's associated or not, we have to do with excellence, or we have to deal with it?
That's a very good point, and something I address in several ways in my book. The performance standards are just as important, or perhaps even more important, the case can be made for nonprofit work, because you are dealing with human beings. You're not dealing with money per se. You're not dealing with products. You're dealing with souls. And even if your motive for getting into nonprofit work is just strictly humanitarian, not spiritual, you can get into this just for humanitarian purposes without a transcendent dimension, but really you're always dealing with people. So if your standards are low, you're not going to be serving those people well, and sometimes you're even going to be harming them.
Yes.
Those with a religious motive for going into nonprofit work are doing it for an even higher standard, the spiritual standard, and doing it for the Lord, as St. Paul says in Colossians. That's our greatest motive. And of course, when we serve the Lord, we're also serving our brothers and sisters. But, there's always, it may not be life and death in every situation. There are some nonprofits that do serve life and death motives, but we're always dealing with human beings, their suffering, their needs, and their well-being. So, you can't have a greater motive for maintaining a high performance culture than that.
Absolutely. And so I'm glad you brought that up for our listeners out there. This book is for any nonprofit, not just the faith-based nonprofit, but even the ones, if you have a heart for serving people, regardless of what the final orientation is, this book really, it really is for you.
Yes, I hope to appeal to a wide range of people and their motives. Of course, it'll become very apparent from the beginning that my motive, I always inject spirituality. I talk about holy people and saints, and I talk about prayer and things like that. Of course, because that's the venue I come out of. But, basically, I'm trying to announce principles that are applicable in any place and any time.
Yes.
These principles are even applicable to for-profit business leadership.
They are. And I would say this as a for-profit leader still now, and speaking primarily to for-profit groups, I would take this and put this leadership book against anything, because it's universal and timeless truths. The context may be different if you're faith-based or not, if you're for-profit or nonprofit, but there's so much more that we share than divides us. So I think this does have a really broad range of appeal. Peter, you also talk about, you have a great line that says, money follows mission. And although we are nonprofits and we're altruistic, somebody said this to me on a Zoom call last night. Salvation is free, but the mission costs money. And I just said that loud, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we need money. And what we do with the Funds of Tremendous Leadership is we fund people that need money. So don't poo-poo money. That's what makes it all happen. But tell me, elaborate on that money follows mission, and a little bit about how the nonprofit leader has to be comfortable with going out there and connecting with donors.
Yes. Okay. There's another part of the human dimension of nonprofit work. You don't necessarily sell products to people when you're a nonprofit. It's that's not what our focus is about. Really, you go and you ask people to buy into your mission, a good mission that you're doing, and you have to find a way to communicate well what that mission is to them, inspire them to want to buy into that mission, if you will, through their writing a check and their donation. And oftentimes you find that people will give to you because you're doing the things that they would like to do if they had the opportunity to do them. You're inspiring, you're tapping into their altruism as well, and you're becoming a conduit for the work that they would like to do. So when I say money follows mission, what I'm saying is that oftentimes you're in this catch-22 situation where you need money to do your mission, but yet if you don't, if you don't have some mission to present to people, you won't get the money. So the idea is to have a vital mission, not some form of entertainment or some low impact type of presentation for people. To have a vital mission, do that very well, and then people will give to you because they're inspired by your mission. So it's keeping the horse before the cart, if you will, by having that mission first, making it vital, making it real, and have an impact, and then present that to people. And you will always be successful in getting donors. I'm sure of that.
Well, and I think one of the things I didn't understand, I'm so glad you brought it up, for-profits exist based on what people give them. And I think a lot of us in the for-profit world, or that are uneducated in nonprofits, we're like, well, the government will just provide funds. And it's like, no. First of all, that's people's money. But the other thing, I forget the stat I read, and it's probably a couple years ago, but it said that I think upwards of almost 80% of charitable giving to organizations to help people comes from private donors, not the government. And that's a beautiful thing, because that's the way it should be. The government can't fix this. This is a human to human thing. And I was really impressed when I saw that, because we should be given to the nonprofits. Yes, I pay my taxes because we live in the greatest country in the world. And, you know, I'm so thankful for the things that are afforded to us, especially if you travel to other parts of the world. What a blessing we have. But what nonprofits do, and that we should really joyfully and gleefully, like you said, I can't go out there and do what these people, I could, but right now my time is called to do this. But there
Yeah.
are other people out there fighting the beautiful fight, and they need resources. They need money to make it happen.
That's right. And it's an extension of we become, or they are an extension of our desire to change the world, really,
Yes.
when we give to organizations. And it all, you know, it's all very individual and unique. You know, God calls people to do certain things, and then God inspires your heart to be concerned about certain things. So there's where the motive comes in, to try to gather. I mean, that's where the leadership comes in. To gather enough people and enough support to keep your mission going and to keep doing this vital work for you. You know, some people think that there's a limited number of donors or funds out there, but there really isn't.
Right.
There's only limited energies on your part to go get them and to be in front of them and to present your mission to them.
Right. And another comment I heard last night was, for nonprofits, we don't find funds, we find friends. And
Yeah, very
that's when
well
you
said.
dial into the person whose heart, and the other thing is, for nonprofits, not everybody is going to see your mission as what jazzes them. Um, you know, there's going to be, so
Right.
it's important to really look at, and you go into that. And Peter, talk a little bit about the relationship of the nonprofit with the importance of the board and that dynamic there, because nonprofit boards, those people in those boards, they do not get paid to be on those boards. And so, but how important that is for them to take the governance role, you know, and the active role in supporting the CEO or the head of the nonprofit. Talk a little bit about that.
Okay. The board of directors is a very important element of the nonprofit world. They are the legal owners, as they are also in a corporation, but they're the legal owners of the nonprofit organization, and they technically hire the executive and CEO. The CEO may hire all kinds of other people in the organization, but the board is responsible for getting the head person to run this organization. And that's part of their due diligence to make sure that the organization is going to be run well and be successful. So boards of directors who don't get paid are all there, like most of us, for because they have a heart for whatever it is that you're doing. All right. If you are in a position to recommend people to be on your board, which is what a leader does in an organization, you have to recommend somebody who is willing to make a sacrificial commitment to that mission. And this is not, this is not an honorary title. This is somebody who participates in the mission in a unique way of governance and oversight of the mission. You know, so they don't always have to be financial donors. In fact, I once had a lawyer on my board who, over the course of many years, he probably gave us hundreds of thousands of dollars of free legal advice. You know how that goes, and
Right.
that was as valuable a contribution to the organization as anyone. And he saved us from a lot of other mistakes that we might have made legally. So there are many ways to make contributions as a board director, but that relationship between the person who directs the executive of the organization and the board of directors is very important. And you always have to have you have to manage your board very carefully, just like you manage your staff. And so I spend some time in the book talking about how important it is to be a clear communicator with the board, to manage them very well, to honor them, to consult with them because they're your first advisors in your role as executive, and to put them to work for the good of the organization as well. Everybody wants to contribute in some way.
Absolutely. And then talk to me about, you go into this extensively, and we've seen many nonprofits that started out one way and became something completely different than what their founder started. And it's always very heartbreaking. Talk to me about mission drift. And that's something that even a for-profit has to be hyper vigilant about, but especially a nonprofit, because as you know, the enemy's walking around waiting to yank us off course
Yes,
in any shape or form.
that's right. Right. Um, well, there's a very important truth for a leader of an organization, and that is that he or she must define clearly what the mission is. It may already be clearly defined, and then by say your founder or your founding documents, and then the leader has to make sure that that mission is maintained and that it's not derailed into some other good project. See, the choice in every nonprofit work is not between something good or evil. It's always between two good things.
Yes.
Like should I do this good thing or should I do that good thing? And all of them are good, and you want to do all of them. So the point is that the leader keeps the actual mission as it's defined by the founder or founding documents, and keeps that clear in front of people at all times, communicates it relentlessly, so that you don't kind of get derailed off into projects which really are not what you're supposed to be doing according to what people are giving to you for, right?
Right.
And the other problem that you have over time in nonprofit, it's not as much a problem as for-profit, is that somebody comes in and wants to donate a large amount of money for some project which is really their project and not your project.
Right. That happens a lot.
And
Yeah.
it does, and then you're over a barrel as a leader, and you have to bite the bullet basically and say, well, this isn't really according to our mission.
Right.
And so you either don't accept the donation, or you have the dialogue with that donor and you say, can we repurpose this towards something which is more what we're telling the rest of our donors that we're supposed to be doing,
Right.
I mentioned how important it is for an executive to read all the writings of your founder, read the founding documents, make sure you're clear about what your mission is, make sure everybody from the board down to the lowest employee is clear about what your mission is, so that you don't kind of get derailed into lots of other good stuff which doesn't have an impact.
That's a great point. And I heard it said best, kind of the point of what you're making is character is more important than charisma. And we may get this, we have this donor on board and they're so connected and deep pockets, but if it's not really lining up, you start chasing all these bright things that you think are going to make you flashier. And that's kind of where we begin getting yanked off into things that that's not at the core of what we're supposed to be.
Yeah, very true. I think there's another fundamental difference between for-profit and nonprofit, in that for-profit really has to respond to the culture and the markets as they are. Right. So that means they're going to be transforming and readapting and reorienting themselves to new realities all the time. Nonprofits basically deal with basic human realities. and
that's a great way to put it. I love that.
Yeah.
Not the culture slippery slope, but this is human. That's fantastic, Peter. Yeah. I'm sorry, go on.
Well, and the only addition to that is that someone in your organization, usually your founder or charismatic leaders early on in your organization, already defined how you're going to meet that human need. So your responsibility when you come later is to be faithful to that vision, right? It's not your responsibility to change the vision of your founder.
Right.
So you stick with how the founder has defined you. Of course, you adapt to certain realities as things change, but basically you're meeting a human need that is a perennial reality, and you stick with it so that you don't go off into doing lots of other good things and make your mission into something frivolous, really, and people won't give to that.
Yes. Fantastic. All right. So, Peter, we're just wrapping up our time together. Anything else you would like the reader to know about this book?
I think one of the things that I enjoyed most in writing the book was the idea of inspiration. Not only inspirational leadership, but finding the leader's role in bringing inspiration to his people, which also means motivation, and putting before them inspirational stories that will keep the fires burning, because if you're a larger organization and you have people sitting in cubicles or people poring over books and things like that and doing menial jobs, they need to be inspired to know that they are still contributing to the mission, even though they're crunching numbers, in a cubicle somewhere. So the role of inspiration, when I was doing missionary work, I would come back from the missions and I would bring all kinds of pictures, and I would put together a slideshow for my staff, and we would have a staff lunch, and then I would show them the pictures of all these great people in Africa or Asia or Latin America that they couldn't meet because they were doing their jobs. But I could meet them, and I went out and took pictures of them and then talked and gave the stories, told them the stories of all the stuff that happened on the mission. And that was very inspiring to the people. I learned a lot by doing that of how important inspiration is for everybody in a nonprofit organization, and also especially for the leader himself or herself. You have to keep the fires burning through inspiration. And there's so many stories out there, especially stories of your own people who are out there on the front lines doing these great works.
Right. And you hit the other point of it. What an encouragement to the recipients. I mean, they see the resources, but when somebody comes out there, a donor, to actually meet with them, I mean, that is just where all the supposed difference between us evaporate, and you just get heart to heart, to person. And the joy that they see in seeing the person that enabled it to happen come out there and share with them is just beyond words. So I would encourage anybody listening, if you're on a board and you get the opportunity to travel over and see where your dollars are at work, I know it'll take time and more money, but do it, because you will be blessed by it. And they will be even more blessed from seeing you in person as they are from getting your phenomenal financial gifts. So take the time to go out and visit and see where your money's being spent.
Right. And the point with regard to leadership, and that reaffirms a very basic point, is that the leader is always supposed to be telling people about the mission.
Yes.
And inspiring people, getting people encouraged to continue to do, because sometimes nonprofit work is very difficult. You're dealing with human needs and problems.
Well,
right?
it can be dangerous too. I mean, those places you're going to find getting shots and in different areas, and people say, well, are you really going to go out there? Well, my goodness, if I'm sending money out there and people are living out there to change their lives, yeah, I think I could fly out there for a couple days and visit. I mean, you got to put yourself out there.
Yeah, that's the best thing, really, when you see it face to face, and it reaffirms the basic point that nonprofit work is all about people, all about changing hearts, changing the world. And when you keep that perspective, people are your greatest resource. They're not just problems for you. They're not just problems to solve. They're also your greatest resource and your greatest motivation to keep going and doing this work for, humanitarian motives and spiritual motives,
Yes. Yeah. Well, I heard a pastor in Pittsburgh, Christian Missionary Alliance pastor in an urban setting, and it was last December, and he was like, there is only one race, and that's the human race. And I mean, the crowd went wild. So much. And I'm like, you know what? That's it. We are all in this together, and we need to start acting like it. And it's just, it's, blessed are the poor and us that can see God and be a walking billboard for him. And that's really what a nonprofit is to reveal the Son in us, or just to reveal the intrinsic goodness in all of us, regardless of where your faith paradigm falls. We're all unique, valued, and created for greatness. So, and to encourage people to do that is a phenomenal thing. So, Peter, where can people reach out to you and connect with you?
Well, the first thing I would do is redirect them to your website to buy a book.
Yes.
There you go. If anybody wanted to get in touch with me personally, it's very easy. Peter Darcy, one word, at yahoo.com. Peter Darcy at yahoo.com. Very easy. I respond, I check it every day and respond to anyone who writes. But more than anything, I hope that they get the book and are inspired by it to become better leaders and better people.
Yeah, it's just fun. And you can get this book on www.tremendousleadership.com. It'll be under our new releases. We have the PDF, we have the digital downloads. We'll try and get Peter to read it so you can hear his wonderful wisdom for those of us that are auditory learners. But yeah, please check it out. It's phenomenal. It's a wonderful gift. And also, like I said, the more you support Tremendous Leadership, the more we're able to continue our nonprofit and our ministry work, which is pretty much about 90% of what we do. So I'm so thankful for you. you. Peter, thankful for this. This is the first nonprofit leadership. We do an awful lot in leadership and motivation, but I just adore this because this is where leadership really counts, where you can't motivate people with a carrot and stick. It's not about money. This is about mission. And boy, you've got to be, this will test your leadership chops. And this book, it's from a leader that's been there. It's from a leader whose heart is right. And I hope it just encourages, inspires you. Peter, I know it did me. And thank you so much for sharing this and all Mr. Buddy brought.
Thank you. Well, you've been an inspiration to me too. And together with Mr. Buddy, I think we're a pretty good team.
Absolutely. Some hound wisdom, I like to say. I love it. All right, Peter, well, you have a blessed rest of the week. And we look forward to get this book getting out far and wide and just inspiring and encouraging other leaders of all walks of life and any leaders that maybe thought about going into the nonprofit world, or anybody sitting there saying, you know what, it's time for me to pick up and be in the nonprofit. We just pray that that really touches a lot of hearts and minds. So be blessed.
Amen to that.
Yeah, thank you again, Peter. Have a wonderful
Thank you. God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye.